management, and the replay is available at iSOAgroup.com. Today's webinar is when good messaging is no longer good enough, focused on the infrastructure companies need to be successful in this new digital world. We are utilizing GoToWebinar for today's webinar to support the recording of the webinar and to make it interactive and productive for all of you. We have all phones muted at the moment, but if you have questions at any time, you can type them in the question area in the GoToWebinar interface. Today's presentation will be about 35 minutes, and we will have plenty of time to address those questions as well as open the phones for audio questions also. Our speakers today are myself, Brian Silverman, iSOA Senior Marketing Leader, Cheryl Bertini, the iSOA COO and Customer Service Leader, and we are honored to have Billy Parker, IBM's North America Integration Sales Leader. In addition, we have Scott Kreinock, the Channel Integration Sales Leader for IBM in North America, who will join us on our panel for answering questions as well. So I'd like to turn over the call right now to Cheryl Bertini, and she's going to give you a welcome and give you a brief introduction to the iSOA Group team. Cheryl?
Thank you, Brian, and thank you everyone for joining today. So as Brian said, I'm the operations officer here at iSOA Group, and my mission at iSOA is to support our customers to ensure they achieve business value from the technical solutions we offer. I realize a number of you are probably familiar with iSOA Group, so I will keep this brief. So iSOA Group is an employee-owned, self-funded services firm in business since 1997. We're an IBM premier business partner and reseller of IBM products. We specialize in the IBM technologies around integration and security with a specific focus on appliances, specifically data power, integration bus and MQ, API management, cast iron, WSRR. So with that, I'd like to turn it back over to Brian Silverman, our Senior Marketing Leader, who will take you through some of the key business issues around messaging and an overview of IBM's MQ messaging offering. Take it away, Brian.
Cheryl, thank you. Again, as she said, I'm going to take you through a little bit around IBM and the messaging environment in MQ. Billy Parker is going to take you through what's new with IBM messaging, and you'll see some great announcements that happened around IBM's Interconnect. And then we'll wrap it up with a new announcement of an offering from the iSOA team and some Q&A, hopefully a lively conversation with all of you. So let's get started. The iSOA team hears much in the marketplace around the evolution of mobile, commerce, and the new digital experience. Whether your customers are consumers, businesses, government, or a combination of all three, the predictions of change occurring are rapid, and their impact on the business infrastructure are well documented here. These predictions you can see here were from Gartner all the way back in 2012 for the future, and now that future is here. Whether you like many enterprises expanding your services to include applications and services in the cloud, Gartner predicted that companies of all sizes would grow their integration spending by 33% by next year. And by 2017, most of that spending will include external integration as well. So as we see customers like yourself also integrating mobile, you can see this $534 billion in transactions that were predicted for this year in mobile alone. And to do that, you need a trusted integration and messaging infrastructure that you can bet your business on. And that's why we titled this webinar, it's not just about good enough messaging anymore. You need the infrastructure that you can bet your business on. Let's take a simple example a few years back would be e-commerce. We'd be talking about someone logging on from a web browser, looking at inventory and placing an order. But commerce is evolving rapidly. Imagine the possibility of having your smartphone walking into a Starbucks, and as you're walking in, a merchant nearby realizing that you're nearby, buying that latte you do every day, and they give you a recommendation for a discounted offer that's only good at the moment that you're in the store for the outfit you're going to wear that weekend. All of that requires the interaction between your phone, your back-end systems, the merchant, Starbucks, and the back-end payment infrastructure for all of that to work together. And that interaction all requires one thing in common. and that is a trusted infrastructure and a messaging system that you can bet your business on. So I know you all know, but connectivity is continuing to grow. Every client like yourself that we talked to today is looking to do more. At the heart of everything is that connectivity. It's connecting systems, it's connecting devices, and at the heart of all that connections is information. There's information moving all along that commerce trail we just talked about. And if that information is not being moved and acted upon from the data collection space to the business, it's just noise and it's not valuable to the business. So what's really important is that clients such as yourself need to be able to connect these systems, have those messages travel, have that newly created data delivered to where it can provide value. And as you all know, in today's world, that isn't at the moment. When it's created, the value is instant and it needs to be timely and connected and working together. So what does your infrastructure look like? We know many of you on this call are MQ customers, but we also know many customers who have MQ or have an infrastructure. We also see them leveraging things like HTTP, FTP, and other technologies as well. Things that require you to do programming from one application to another. But really, or are you all lucky enough to have a single backbone that is well integrated, that you can rely on, is secured, and is seamless, and most importantly, again, is not just good enough messaging, but is an infrastructure that you can bet your business on. And yes, we believe messaging matters. One of the things I've always been proud of working for iSOA Group is we understand that to gain the value of commerce, cloud, analytics, and all the great noise in the IT industry, the infrastructure and the messaging and the integration that we focus on, they matter to make all that value real. So whether that transaction is the payment that really only has to happen one time for you to get that output for the weekend, whether you need to expand and add a new application, whether your applications are getting too complex because you're having to write the integration from one to another, or you're just looking to be more agile, we know that the infrastructure matters and messaging matters. Failures still will happen, but it's how you are able to respond in your infrastructure to protect your customers. We understand it's about trying to handle these failures, but being able to respond, and you need to be able to move any type of data across your infrastructure, whether it's from a common shared API, leveraging common shared APIs and infrastructure, and most importantly, it needs to be configurable, persistent, secured, and predictable. So what is messaging? Everyone talks about different things, but when we think about messaging in the iSOA Group and along IBM, we define messaging as having an infrastructure and a queue that can help you manage in the movement of data from your systems from one point to another. It can be as simple as sending that payment to your backend system. So it could be as simple as that customer implementing a payment and getting ready to get their confirmation. And what happens if one of those entities fails? Isn't it nice to have a system in the middle that can make sure that message gets there without your customer realizing it was down? It could also be like the second scenario here, where it's more transactional based and you're having to track the state of that moment in that transaction from one application to another. There could be a payment. It could be a confirmation in a business-to-business environment of a purchase order being received. And then at some point in the future, the state changes around a shipment, and having that trusted infrastructure that you can bet on. Or it could be you have messaging like a stock quote or a sports score that you need to make sure gets out timely, but is only valued at the moment. Think about if you were a sports news agency and you're still trying to report the scores for the basketball tournament last night. You don't want to be in that environment. You want to be in an environment where your messaging matters and the information gets to where it needs to get to in a timely manner. As you all know, when you think of that queue, that solution in the middle that provides a robust messaging infrastructure, it can help you be successful. To be successful, it must address some key requirements to be of value and trusted by your company. In today's world where we are not just talking applications, but mobile devices and the Internet of Things, being able to connect across multiple devices, networks, and operations and applications is key. If all systems are connected, but the device that your customer is holding, whether it's a cell phone or a meter reader or some other device fails, then the whole solution is falling down. The key is to have a trusted system that's designed to connect and mirror the devices all the way even to your car or a meter. This connectivity needs to be reliable, You have to know that if at any point the message flow fails, that the system will recover, and that message will get to the place that it needs to get to, and only once and in a predictable way. Flexibility is also key, so that you can add or change different applications, but know the messages will move from one legacy environment to a new environment, whether the system down the hall is now actually in the cloud. And it needs to perform so that as your business and needs grow, the infrastructure can start simple and grow as well. Think about the challenges of custom integration when every day a new application is coming online, you're expanding, or you're adding new merchants into your infrastructure. So success comes from a trusted messaging infrastructure that has universal connectivity, is reliable, flexible, and is ready to scale as your business grows. MQ and IBM understands what that messaging needs to be. IBM has been delivering robust messaging for over 20 years with MQ series and its family of messaging solutions. Whether you're looking at a trusted backbone in your enterprise to offload the messaging between applications to a standard infrastructure, or looking at mobile and the need to exchange messages, not just smartphones anymore, but we're talking meters and devices that can communicate at all times, or you're looking to connect applications across an infrastructure that includes standards such as JMS and other messaging, but you need to do it in a trusted environment and have your application developers focused on the business at hand and not the messaging infrastructure underneath. So let's start from the top. As you all know, IBM MQ is really about messaging you need and when you need it. It's about keeping all that connectivity logic and associated error handling out of the applications, and it is an infrastructure able to scale from a simple low-use application or up to billions of messages per day on any platform from mainframes to mobile. And because the data is valuable, IBM MQ can secure it, and it can assure the messaging integrity and the transactional quality that is going on. So when you combine all of that with high availability and predictability, MQ really is about messaging you need and as you need it. And what does MQ do? Did you know, even if you are a current MQ customer, that almost every platform has the ability to support MQ, and IBM continues to deliver on the capabilities and enhancing it across multiple applications, operating systems, and devices. IBM has over 10,000 customers today who built their business around MQ, and IBM continues to invest with large teams today. And that is why we focus today not only on just giving you an overview of messaging, but we want to highlight all the great improvements and recent announcements in MQ. And I'd like to turn this over now to Billy Parker, who's going to take you through some of those enhancements and the new capabilities that IBM has. Billy?
Okay, thanks a lot, Brian. So if we go ahead and jump to the next chart. So as Brian mentioned, and many of you, I'm sure, may already know, MQ has been in the market for over 20 years and is the market leader in providing reliable, assured, once and only once message delivery. Essentially, MQ provides an abstraction layer which allows developers to offload the development of that communication logic by creating a universal messaging backbone, allowing developers to focus on building business logic, not writing communication and worrying about communication logic. So imagine if you were doing a banking transaction and you need to transfer money from savings to a checking account. You want to ensure that message happens once and only once. Without a messaging backbone, you would need to develop a lot of additional logic to ensure that that transaction first happens successfully and secondly happens once and only once. So in the ideal, perfect world scenario, if everything works great, then, wonderful, there's not a lot to do. But you would still need to worry about what happens if I have a communication failure, what happens if the application is down, on the receiving end. So there's all of those aspects that you would have to build logic to take into consideration. That is essentially what MQ is providing you, reducing the need to worry about that area and offloading that into something like a messaging backbone, allowing the developer to focus on the true business value. So essentially MQ, a couple additional points here on this particular chart. MQ provides connectivity to virtually any platform, supporting a wide range of development languages and topologies, as well as a range of quality of services to choose from. So if we can move to the next chart. So as we kind of highlighted and talked about on the prior chart, MQ provides a universal messaging backbone. Highlighted here are some additional services which are needed to provide that comprehensive messaging infrastructure. So if we start here, we have the Managed File Transfer Service. As much as we'd like to think that enterprises have moved away from using files, we find that there is still a lot of core apps that still exchange information via files using FTP. So that can be somewhat error-prone as well. So MFT basically provides the means to move those files while providing the same core qualities of service of MQ, so that reliable, assured, once and only once delivery. So again, kind of giving you that extra value on top of just moving a file and not knowing if it got there or not. Additionally, we have Advanced Message Security, which is our AMS component. I'm sure we've all seen the headlines and reports of the growing number of security breaches and things like that. AMS essentially provides increased protection by encrypting messages at rest. So today, MQ encrypts the messages that's flowing through the pipe from queue to queue. But when that message arrives at its destination, it is actually setting in the clear on the queue, waiting for the application to pick it up and move it or consume it. So by providing that extra encryption, you're again kind of increasing your protection against a security breach, especially with sensitive data. So what we've seen a lot of times is people that are moving very sensitive data around have started to choose to implement things of this nature to give them that extra layer of protection. The last one here is telemetry. With the trends around the Internet of Things and the need to connect mobile devices and sensors growing rapidly, the telemetry component provides a lightweight protocol that can deliver, again, the same qualities of service of MQ, that reliable, assured, once and only once delivery. It's designed with a small footprint for remote mobile devices or sensors, and gives you that capability to communicate back and forth. It also comes with some other additional advantages, such as a lot of applications you'll see, especially in mobile, will really suck your battery down as you start to use them. So this has been very optimized to provide, reduce the drain on batteries while providing that great reliability. Essentially, as you can kind of see on the chart, we have, this is called IBM MQ 8.0 Advanced. What we've done is bundle these components so that you can now take advantage of one or all of these services as it's needed in a flexible deployment model. So basically, you can buy one part number, one PVU of this, and you can deploy it as needed. You can use all of these components or only the ones you need. So it's very flexible. So if we can move on to the next chart. So we're getting to the fun stuff now. So essentially, what we're really hoping to do here was kind of introduce a new offering from IBM. So as you've seen highlighted in the past couple of charts, some of the capabilities around IBM Messaging, we now want to take some additional time to introduce you to our new messaging appliance. The MQ appliance delivers the same core capabilities in an optimized physical appliance form factor. As an appliance, this product offers businesses rapid deployment of enterprise messaging along with simpler administration, both in day-to-day operation as well as when applying maintenance. As well as some of the typical appliance benefits, which we can go into a little bit later. The appliance provides that rapid time to deployment, easy to configure and run for both enterprises and remote deployments, simple out-of-the-box high availability with a paired connectivity to another device, ease of maintenance through certified firmware updates, browser-based user interface for monitoring and administration of the MQ resources based on roles, and high levels of performance and throughput with MQ implementations optimized for the appliance hardware. So that kind of, in a high level, kind of gives us a little bit of overview of what the MQ appliance can do. So if we move on to the next chart. So why an appliance? So we kind of touched on several of these, and I'll kind of dig a little deeper into a couple of them. So the fixed hardware specifications allow us to pre-tune this environment. So basically, as if you were a current MQ user today and you spun up a new MQ manager on some type of hardware, basically you have to go in there and tune that hardware, kind of configure it, kind of get it running the best that it's, the best possible way based on all the different variables of the hardware, the software, and the target performance needs. Essentially, we've removed that because we are now delivering to you this appliance which has already been tuned and configured to be optimized. So it takes a lot of that work out. So no need to do that. It comes out of the box. It's ready to go. So all you have to do is set up your queue manager, and away you go. Again, leveraging some of that appliance form factor and that standardization accelerates deployment because now we have, like I said, less configuration and tuning, as well as we don't have to worry about other departments acquiring hardware, deploying hardware, placing patches on it. Simply, here it is, it's up, it's ready, it's usable. We just give the end user a client to connect to it, and we're off and running. So that kind of brings us to the third point here, which is the hub pattern. So unlike kind of the traditional MQ networks where a lot of times you'd see a more distributed network type topology with queue managers spread or maybe next to core applications, this concept is taking and saying, hey, let's try to consolidate these things. Let's bring them back in. Let's run multiple queue managers in this appliance form factor and kind of create a hub and spoke type approach. So, again, it gives you great enhancements in the operation management, the maintenance, as well as the monitoring capabilities there. And it, again, reduces kind of some of the sprawl that is associated with a lot of today's big network deployments. There's not to confuse it. We're not advocating that you can take a huge, large MQ network and drop in a few appliances and do away with what you have today, because we still see the need in certain cases that you probably do need queue managers co-located with applications for performance or for whatever reasons. And so having kind of that hybrid environment is kind of what we see long-term as going forward. So if we move on to the next chart. So here we're going to talk about a few of the common use cases that that we're seeing customers adopting, and kind of some of the initial pushes to implement the appliance. The first is kind of like I kind of talked a little bit about is simplification. So we're starting to see, large deployments or large networks saying, hey, look, we need to consolidate. We need to reduce this to get a handle on what we're trying to do. So they're starting to leverage a lot of the MQ appliances to consolidate those distributed queue managers, bring them into one place so that they can manage them easier, so they can apply updates, so they can do version-to-version upgrades more simply. Kind of the second area around that is remote deployments. So we have several cases where customers needed to deploy these in remote branches, remote factories, or distribution centers where they didn't have true, IT resources that can maintain them and support them. So, this is allowing them to pre-configure them, load them, ship them out, and essentially have someone there rack, mount it, and plug it in, and then it has the capability of being managed back from the central back office or enterprise side. So again, allowing you to get that connectivity and that reliability you need, but just in a more simple, faster, time-to-market way of deploying it. The third kind of scenario that we're really seeing a lot of traction in is the high availability, which I kind of touched on earlier. So essentially today, with two appliances, you have out-of-the-box HA capabilities. So both of these appliances are backing each other up in real time, so no other components needed. So a very easy way to implement HA, and I'm sure if you're any MQ users on the phone that have implemented the multi-cluster MQ HA scenario, you'll attest that there is some challenges to it, and it is a little bit convoluted and complicated. So this has taken a lot of that area off. And kind of the last area that we really, where we're kind of very, very excited about is the ability to, what I'll call new workloads. So for customers that don't have an MQ environment for whatever reason, or have chosen to use HTTP or JMS, and not using that reliable messaging, but probably need it, this is a great way to get yourself up and started without developing, without that long lead time to develop this network of queue managers and queues and infrastructure. Essentially, you can be up and running in, hours versus days. So again, a great opportunity, as well as in existing, MQ networks. Bringing on new workloads is certainly much simpler if I already can just leverage this appliance to set up and manage it, rather than going through and acquiring hardware, configuring hardware, putting the appropriate OS on it, and then loading the software. So there's quite a bit of savings there. So if we move on to the next chart. As I talked about prior, HA is one of the large kind of big value points that we have seen our current customers adopting, and essentially as in this diagram depicts, there's a primary and a secondary. They're wired together, and they essentially back each other up. It's not to say that you have to have two appliances that are one setting idle while the other is working. You can actually leverage these in an active mode and still back each other up. So it's not like it's, hardware sitting there doing nothing. Again, very easy to use, very quick to implement, and providing a lot of capability around HA. So if we move on to the next chart. So a few key differences to compare here. Like I said, I think I've talked through most of these, but I'll highlight on the hub approach here. Again, it's taking the concept of consolidation, bringing down, that network spread topology type approach, and putting everything in one appliance or multiple appliances, that now when I get ready to onboard an application, essentially I'm giving them a MQ client versus an MQ client, queue manager. So they're able to connect back into the appliance, and we have that hub and spoke approach. The appliance can run, many queue managers, so you can still segment certain pieces of your business within the appliance, but it still gives you that centralized hub type approach. Again, like I said on the prior slide, HA, huge advantage. Essentially, the two appliances is all you need. If you were trying to do multi-instance queue management, you're going to have some type of shared disk or file system behind that, which again adds additional complexity and concern to it. So a huge benefit for it. So if we move on to the next chart, and I'm going to pass it back to Brian, and there you go.
Great. Thank you, Billy, very much. That was a great introduction. The iSOA team at Interconnect in Las Vegas about a month ago did an integration roundtable breakfast with a bunch of customers, and frankly, we heard a lot of good things about their feedback on the appliance and how that may work in their MQ environments as well. So we really wanted to bring this webinar, and Billy, greatly appreciate your input and your telling the customers on the call as well as the iSOA team some of the early experience and use cases that are focused around the MQ appliance, as well as understanding some of the advantages around MQ version 8. And as the iSOA team keeps working, we want to know how can we bring the most business value looking at this new messaging environment with the appliance, looking at MQ version 8. And as Billy mentioned, whether you're currently not an MQ customer or maybe you have some departments or infrastructure that have deployed MQ and some that have not, we think most customers are looking at a infrastructure that has either a mixture of point-to-point messaging and MQ, are leveraging programming interfaces, or leveraging FTP, or they're a current MQ customer maybe on older releases or a combination of releases, and are really looking how do they create this trusted, robust infrastructure that both I mentioned and Billy did, whether you're looking to expand to mobile, whether you're adding new applications on the cloud, looking at a new commerce environment, or truthfully are adding another infrastructure within your enterprise that could actually be cloud-based or something new to your environment. So what we're announcing today from the iSOA team, we've done a lot of lifecycle offerings where we've come in and done reviews with customers. As Cheryl mentioned, we're one of the core competencies of the iSOA team beyond integration in the traditional IBM WebSphere platform is we've been in the appliance business from the very beginning with IBM. And what we want to do is come in and help you all understand your infrastructure, look whether you're a current MQ customer, you're not an MQ customer, and help you do a brief assessment as to what the value will be, either advancing to MQ version 8 or most importantly looking at the appliance. We know there's some operational values of the appliance. We know also working with some initial customers and discussions with Billy and the IBM team, there's some cost of ownership advantages from an appliance operational environment. It's also a matter if you look at the appliance, if you had a remote department or a partner that you wanted to deploy some MQ capabilities and they may not have skills, the MQ appliance and the capabilities that are packaged especially with MQ version 8 Advanced give you some new opportunities. So working with us and talking with us about your environment, we don't believe a one-size-fits-all. We actually believe that if you work with us, you'll gain the most business value, and we can help you assess the right approach in your messaging environment going forward. So as Cheryl introduced, she's our customer service leader. Between herself and myself, we can schedule some time with one of our certified consultants. We're only talking about an hour, and then we'll give you some feedback and some recommendations on your next steps. So we are at the end of the presentation part. We'd like to open it up for questions. We have a few that have come in directly to me, but if you'd like to answer a question, if you look in the interface on the GoToMeeting, you'll see a question answer, and you can request a question, or we'll just open up all the phones in just a minute. But the first question I have while we're waiting to see if any of you have questions in the interface is, if you've got a mixture of MQ environments between version 7 and version 6 and even version 8, do you have to all be on version 8 to leverage the value of the MQ2000 appliance? And the answer is, just as in most MQ environments, previous clients and capabilities can be integrated with that appliance. Even though IBM would recommend, of course, that you all upgrade to the most current release, we know that's not always possible. That's one of the reasons the iSOA team wants to help you with this assessment, so you know how to gain the most advantage from the latest technology as quick as possible. And then we have one more question, and that was, in Billy's diagram, he showed that the MQ appliance is good in the back end and the secured part of your enterprise, and also could be deployed remotely, but in the DMZ it was not recommended. And we actually had a picture of data power, and since many of you are obviously have good eyes and realize that they're on the same physical appliance, why would you not put the MQ appliance in the DMZ? And the answer is, even though the MQ appliance is riding on the physical infrastructure or appliance of data power, it doesn't have all the security and protections that data power deploys around things like web application firewalls and different technologies. So what we recommend, along with IBM, is that you can leverage the MQ appliance, and remember, data power is an MQ client as well, and that can build the most robust and secured infrastructure. So we don't see any questions on the system. I'm going to unmute everybody. If anyone has any questions in the meantime, it wants to only unmute one person at a time. So David, do you have a question? It says you have a question. I don't know if you do or not. David? David, can you hear me? I guess not. It shows you on twice. I don't know how that happened, but let's try one more time here. Sorry about the crazy use here. There's the question, David, I see it, thank you. Is there a large cost discrepancy between the PVU purchase model versus an appliance? Billy?
No, I don't think so. Actually, we have the appliance in two versions, I guess. So we have what we call the 2000A, which is a little bit higher performance and capabilities, and then we have the B appliance, which is has a little less capabilities and priced at about half of the cost. So I think we can certainly talk to you in more detail about that, but I don't think there's a lot of difference, especially when you start looking at the value and how many queue managers one of these appliances can run.
Thank you, Billy. I also think when you look at total cost of ownership of the operation of the appliance, that also gives you some added advantage, and we can help you assess the total cost, not just the PVU cost as well. Any other questions? Well, on behalf of the iSOA team and IBM, obviously you have our contact information as well as Cheryl's on the screen. We'd be happy to work with all of you. And David, you're quite welcome. And thanks everyone, and have a great day.